It's 7 o'clock, and I will call the meeting to order. This is the regular meeting of the Board of Education of Kaneland, District 302. We would like to inform all board meeting attendees that this meeting is being live streamed and archived for access at any time by our community members on the internet within 24 to 48 hours of the meeting's conclusion. This meeting is open to the public in accordance with Phase 5 guidance issued by the Illinois Department of Public Health and the Illinois State Board of Education. Individuals are required to wear a face covering at all times while in the building, including during the meeting and when speaking at the microphone. As we've been doing, if we look out and we see that there are a lot of masks that aren't being worn, we'll take a quick recess so everyone can reset and put them back on. If it continues, we will adjourn and reconvene virtually at a later date. So if you'll rise for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And a roll call, please.
Mrs. Witt.
Here.
Mrs. Junk.
Here.
Mr. Carey.
Here.
Dr. Lawler.
Here.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Here.
Mrs. Simmons.
Here.
Mr. Gonzalez is absent.
With 6 members present, we have a quorum. Do any board members wish to move anything from the consent agenda to new business? Anything, anyone? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on then. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
And a roll call, please.
Mrs. Junk.
Aye.
Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye. Motion carries 6-0. Move on now to the board and superintendent salutes, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Fuchs.
Thank you.
Huh? I didn't sign anything.
Okay, then they're on to me. All right, good evening. Thank you. This evening, we would like to recognize a few people. The first person is Mr. Tim Wolf, our Director of Technology. Mr. Wolf is in the back. Welcome. Mr. Wolf applied for and received a large grant of over $1.5 million for technology. Congratulations. Woo. We are very excited. We will be purchasing student Chromebooks, teacher laptops, and probably Wi-Fi for the school buses once we ensure that it works properly. Mr. Wolf, I don't know if you want to say a few things or if the board has any questions for you, but again, thank you for your time and your efforts. This certainly is a boost to our financial situation with regard to technology, so thank you.
You're welcome. Happy to do it. Really excited about this project. Do you have any questions or anything? It's a lot of stuff. We're talking over 3,000 Chromebooks. We can get up to 400 teacher staff laptops, and the grant will pay for Wi-Fi in 64 school buses. But we want to test it on one first before we implement it on all 64. So we have equipment ordered for one bus right now. It should be in the next couple weeks. We'll test it with our transportation director and do some routes, and then if that's a success, then we'll move on from there.
Is there a deadline for when it has to be used?
Yes, June 2022.
Okay.
So we have some time.
Great. Again, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Dr. Atkins, I believe you have new staff members to introduce for us this evening.
I do, thank you. And so we continue bringing our sites to the board meetings to meet the board and introduce our new teachers. Tonight I have with us Blackberry Creek, and I'd like to introduce Ms. Courtney Ward, who is going to then in turn introduce our staff.
Hi, thank you. I have two staff members and then also Emily Waller, the assistant principal, although you met her with Stuart, but she is part of the new Blackberry Creek family as well. We do have two new staff members who have been a tremendous asset to our building and the district as a whole. They continue to impress me daily and do create phenomenal learning experiences for our students, so we are very excited to have them on board, and they will introduce themselves.
Just wanted to say hello again, Emily Waller, Assistant Principal at Blackberry, and John Stewart.
Hi, I'm Amanda Nelson. I teach technology at Blackberry.
Hello, I'm Jacob Rayner, and I teach PE at Blackberry.
So thank you. We have our staff from McDowell will be joining us at our next board meeting. And there we have a Jacob who teaches PE at Blackberry, and you'll meet the other Jacob who teaches PE at KME and KSS next week, or next board meeting. So thank you very much and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you and welcome, everyone.
Our third salute tonight is in honor of a very special person. And on behalf of Dr. Layden, who couldn't be here this evening, it is my honor to recognize Mrs. Beth Starkel. Beth, please stand up. Beth has worked at Kaneland School District for over 30 years. She has most recently been the superintendent's secretary and the board secretary for the past, I believe, about 10 years, maybe 8. Yep. And Mrs. Starkel thinks that it's time to retire. And so we want to wish her very well. She's been a very important part of our district office, and we are all going to miss her very much. Tonight, please help me honor Mrs. Beth Starkel. Beth, thank you so much for your efforts.
Thank you.
I do want to also recognize there's a new person sitting next to Beth, and that is Mrs. Julie Orfel. Julie will be taking over for Beth and has been training with Beth for the past couple of weeks and has been working in the district office now for a little over a year and at Kaneland for about 5 years. So, Julie, welcome.
Thank you.
And we're looking forward to having you be a part of the board team. Thank you.
Welcome, Julian. And Beth, don't tell her how much we actually bug you.
All righty. 2 more salutes tonight. The first one I would like to call on Mr. David Roman and Mrs. Jill Maris. They will be presenting some athletes and activity students from Kaneland High School. There she is. Mrs. Maris.
Good evening. I'm actually going to start with our National Merit Letter of Commendations. Students, so if the 3 of you could come and join me up here, I'd appreciate it. All right, this evening I'm honored to share with you that we have 3 students who are recipients of the National Merit Letter of Commendation. This signifies their designation as a commended student in the National Merit Scholarship Program. They are among about 34,000 commended students nationwide who have shown exceptional academic promise. Their performance on the qualifying PSAT test was outstanding, and a recognition as a commended student is a credit to them, their parents, and the Kaneland School District. The National Merit Scholarship Corporation shared the following for each of them. The degree of success you achieve in the future will depend upon you, your abilities, and your perseverance towards the goals you set for yourself. We offer you our best wishes with the hope that being named a commended student in the National Merit Program will broaden your horizons and encourage you to develop your potential to the fullest. Please join me in congratulating the following students. The first one is Faith Bartkowiak. Next, we have Vaughn Blade. And the final is Matthew Vogt, who I'll be giving his to tomorrow. So congratulations to all three.
Congratulations.
This evening, we're also celebrating the fall sports. David Rollman was not able to join us tonight. He is attending the National Athletic Directors Conference in Denver right now, but he did ask me to share the following. And while I'm doing that, can coaches and students come on up here to join us in just a few minutes? Thank you. David wrote, the athletic department would like to thank the Board of Education, district and building administration, district maintenance, the coaches and the staff of the athletic department, and especially the students and their families for a very successful fall season. As you will hear tonight from our coaches and athletes, there were tremendous successes for our students and teams as we continue to strive for excellence in an educationally based athletic setting. We had participation in all 9 of the IHSA offering interscholastic fall sports. 8 of the 9 sports participated in full seasons, while we did have 2 students also participate in the state swimming and diving series as knights. We had 35 full-time paid and volunteer coaches support, guide, and lead our students this fall. We had 341 athletes, which was an increase of 26% that were involved in our fall athletics at Kaneland High School. We had numerous all-conference, all-area, and all-state honors, which our coaches will talk about tonight. And as we end our first semester, we will be calculating our individual fall sports GPAs, as well as our overall fall GPA as a program in school. And this will be shared with the Board of Ed and community in January. We also continue to celebrate our new partnership with Northwestern Medicine and our new certified athletic trainer, Maggie Walker. Maggie has been an outstanding addition to our athletic program, and Northwestern's Mr. Kevin Pennington, Director of Athletic Training, and Dr. Brian Babka, Team Doctor. They have provided our students with excellent care and support. One new and exciting change coming second semester will be the ability to offer digital ticketing. While we will begin with athletic events, this will be expanded to encompass many other school functions in the future, such as dances, concerts, and possibly student parking. This will help reduce the amount of cash needed at events, as well as provide our community and those who visit a touchless option for attending our events. So let me begin this evening by introducing to you our first coach, and it's going to be Chad Clary to share with you about the boys and girls cross country. Chad.
Hi, board. Most of our boys team is about 6 feet tall. We have to adjust the microphone to my height. Grateful to be here tonight, to be with you, to kick off what was a great fall sports season for all of our programs. I actually get the blessing tonight of being able to talk about the girls cross-country program. Doug Ecker is our girls head cross-country coach, but he, like you, was also on a board at his church, and they're working on gaining a new pastor tonight, so that's why he was not able to be here, and I volunteered to take his place. Among the great successes that the girls cross-country program had this fall, they were the 4th place finishers at our own Kaneland Larry Eddington Invitational. They won the Sterling Rock River Run as a team. When we got to the postseason, which is the state series that leads up to the state meet, they finished 4th at the regional. They finished 7th at the sectional, which this year, with the way that the IHSA organized their things, had the girls qualifying for the state meet for the 14th time, in their program's history. That was probably one of the highlights for me as a coach, was to be able to share the bus with the team on our way down to the state finals and to share all of that with them. They finished 27th at the state finals this year, and some of the individual accommodations and acclamations that we wanted to present to you, we have the all-conference juniors of Rose Dalal and Lindsay Andre, and they had 7 different academic all-conference selections in Rose Dalal, Lindsay again, Paige Sparber, Abby Riley, Allie Ganella, Jacqueline Netnan, and Amanda Medrick. For the girls' side, it was a great season for them, and I'm excited that 2 of our boys cross-country runners came tonight to talk a little bit about their season. So thank you.
All right. Hi, I'm Logan Coons, and I'm a senior on the boys cross-country team. We got to start our season off this year by competing at the first King County meet since 1978, and that was on a brand new $11 million purpose-built cross-country course in Geneva, so that was definitely a major, really fun experience. We were 7th at our own Eddington Invitational, but we were only 11 points off 3rd, which is very close in a cross-country meet. The next week after that, we went to the Sterling Rock River Invite, where that was my favorite meet of the year. We won that meet, and one of my favorite moments of the season, when I was finishing that race, I could see all my teammates right with us, which was just really right near me, which was a really cool experience. The week after that, we went for the first time in our program's history up to Wisconsin. The first time we competed at a different state. We won the Antioch Pat Harlan Invitational, and we not only won the varsity, but we won on all 3 levels of that meet. And then a little while after that, we got to our conference meet, which was held by us at our home course. We won the meet. We extended our conference win streak to 4 times consecutively. And freshman Evan Nosek was also the individual varsity conference champion. So I'm going to turn it over to my teammate Christian Phillips, who will talk about the postseason.
Hello, I am Christian Phillips. I am also a senior at Kaneland High School. So the way the postseason works is we have what's called regionals, sectionals, and state series. So for the regionals, it was at Kaneland High School. I would say we performed really well. We placed 2nd overall as a team. We had numerous all-regional athletes, and then when it came to sectionals, we went to Fenton High School, and we also placed 2nd there to qualify for the state series. And then at the state series, we actually qualified for state for the 23rd year in Kaneland history, and at the state series, we placed 4th overall with our freshman Evan Nosek coming in with a 15-17 3-mile to get all state. And one of my favorite memories of the season is the bus ride to state and Peoria picnic area. Thank you.
Thank you for our cross country. Thank you. Next, I'd like to introduce you Coach Pat Ryan.
Hi, I'm Pat Ryan. I'm the head football coach. Here with me tonight, we have 3 of our all-conference players, senior running back and team captain Corey Phillips, sophomore wide receiver Eric Johnson, and sophomore wide receiver Dominic DeBlasio. Thank you to Dr. Layden, Dr. Fuchs, and the rest of the school board for having us here tonight and recognizing the accomplishments of our kids. The varsity football program, we finished with a 5-5 record this year, and 5-4 in the regular season. That was good enough to get us 3rd place in conference. We did qualify for the Class 5A playoffs. Football is kind of unique because we're the only sport that you have to kind of qualify for the postseason and have a positive record. Unfortunately, we lost in the first round to the eventual Class 5A state champion, Fenwick. This year we did have some individual honors for our kids. In addition to Corey, Eric, and Dominic, we also had senior wide receiver Sam Gagney, sophomore quarterback Troyer Carlson, and junior defensive back and wide receiver Johnny Spalasso that received all conference honors. We had 5 players make academic all-conference and another 5 that were honorable mention. Eric and Dominic, who are with us tonight, also received academic all-state honors. To be academic all-state, you have to have a 3.5 GPA and be first team all-conference, as well as, so that shows that they're doing it in the classroom as well as on the football field. Troyer Carlson, our quarterback, was also given that honor. Senior wide receiver Sam Gagney was first team Illinois High School Football Coaches Association All-State in Class 5A. And sophomore quarterback, sophomore, Troyer Carlson was an honorable mention, he's one of the few sophomores across the state to receive any type of state level accolades. And, lastly, I think we owe a huge debt of support to the Kaneland community for their ongoing support of Kaneland football. Friday nights at the high school in the fall are a great place to be, and, it's a great atmosphere, and that it's a whole community that supports us, and we appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Coach Mark Meyer to talk about golf.
Good evening, Kaneland Board. Thank you for letting us share some of our season with you and with the Kaneland community. My name is Mark Meyer. I'm the head varsity boys golf coach, and here with me tonight we've got Patrick Gamfer and Gavin Woods, two of our seniors that have been a part of the Kaneland golf program ever since they were middle schoolers, and have really helped us lead the team to a lot of successes, which I'll go through a few of those right now. It was another great season for the varsity Knights golf team. We placed first place at the 12-team DeKalb Invite, first place at the 18-team Sterling Invite, fourth place at the 20-team Batavia Invite, which is probably the most impressive of those because it's almost all top 3A teams and we're a 2A division, so we were competing against some of those excellent big schools as well. This was our fourth year in a row of winning the conference with a thrilling finish. We were doing live scoring this year online, so everyone in the crowd knew that Gavin Woods needed to par the last hole, except I don't know if he knew it though. He put it right in the middle of the green, got his par, and we won by one stroke. So it was a really exciting finish at conference. It's our fifth year in a row winning regionals this year, and there was a trip downstate for two of our seniors, Josh Pale and Cody Ganzen, who got to go downstate for their third time. We had four all-conference golfers, Josh Pale, Cody Ganzen, Hagen Rank, and Gavin Woods. And Cody Ganzen took first place at the regional tournament this year, and Josh won the Batavia Invite. That was a big accomplishment for him, and he also took 15th place overall at the state tournament. So those were some of our big accomplishments for this year, and we are looking forward to another fun year next year. Thanks for letting us share with you.
Do we have girls golf? Awesome, thank you.
Hello, board. My name is Joe Hughes. I'm the head coach of the girls program. I appreciate the chance to get out and speak for the girls. This is our second year in existence as a program, and we're definitely doing some really good things with our team and successes on the course. We were able to win the conference for our second straight year. We were also able to advance 2 players to regionals and sectionals, and we also had the Kane County Player of the Year in Catherine Marshall, who advanced to state as an individual, placing 14th overall. I also have with me Julia Skiva, who is a all-conference player, and she would like to give you a little bit more information on the season as well.
Hi, my name is Julia, and I'm a junior, and I'm really proud to represent Kaneland Girls Golf and talk a little bit about our season. We had a record of going 9 wins and 1 loss. We started out by winning the Rock Falls Golf Invite, and after that we placed almost first in almost all of our tournaments. This team is very hardworking and dedicated, and I'm truly honored to play alongside all of them. As Coach said, we placed first at conference for the second year, and then at regionals we played a tough course, but Catherine Marshall and I continued on to sectionals. At sectionals it was raining a lot, but Catherine continued on to state, placing 14th. And then we had 4 all-conference players, which was Catherine Marshall, I, Erin Huang, and Grace Algram. I'm really excited for another season next year.
And next, Coach Perillo with soccer.
Hello, thank you for having us. I'm Scott Perillo, the boys varsity soccer coach. Our recap for the season, varsity and JV finished second in conference. In our regional championship game, we lost to eventual state champion Rockford Boylan, who actually lost their very first game of the season and then rolled off 25 straight victories. And of course, unfortunately, we happen to be one of them. We have 4 all-conference players, senior Nick Mitchinson, senior Jack Rissman, senior Lucas Bass, and junior Andrew Davison. We had 2 all-conference honorable mention, senior Carson Batts and junior Anthony Buchanan, and our state recognition was all-sectional honorable mention, junior Andrew Davison. So that's our recap. Thank you so much for having us.
I'd like to introduce to you our new head coach for the girls tennis team, Mrs. Beth Miller.
I'm way too short for this. Hold up. Does it just turn? All right, there we go. So I have to say, this is my first time doing this, and I am so glad that tennis comes at the end of the alphabet and everybody else got to go first. This is fantastic. So that being said, yes, this was my first season, and I learned a ton. Even though COVID proved to be a little bit challenging at times, we are so grateful that we got to have a full, normal season this year. So thank you for allowing us to play. We have some season highlights. We were plagued with a little bit of injuries this year, some devastating ones, but we do have some things to note. At the beginning of the season, we took second place at the Plainfield North Girls Varsity Invite. Towards the end of the season, we took first place at the Rochelle Ladies Hub Invite. Individual highlights, we had 3 all-conference players. We had senior Evie Taylor. We had senior Faith Barkowiak, who's sitting over there. We had junior Lexi Mayberry. So Faith and Lexi played together at third doubles, and they took first place at the conference tournament. Evie played first singles, and she took second place at the conference tournament. The following weekend, Evie went on to take third place at the sectionals tournament, making her only the third girl in Kaneland tennis history to have qualified for state all 4 years of high school. So Evie went on to go, she went further in state than she has ever gone before, and she was named the Daily Chronicle's Player of the Year. So we are super excited and looking forward to next year. Thank you.
And our last team is our volleyball with the assistant coach, Todd Vandervoorn.
Good evening. Obviously Todd Vandervoorn, Megan O'Sullivan, and Mackenzie Ewan, 2 of our seniors. Coach Vi apologized she couldn't be here tonight, so she's asked me to read her notes. One thing she didn't mention that I'm really proud of these girls, our whole team has academic honors, so that's extremely impressive. All right, the volleyball program, again, had a successful season. It was nice to actually have a normal season with tournaments, playoffs, and team bonding. The freshman team ended up with a record of 15, 12, and 2. The sophomore team, once again, ended up with their season undefeated 2 years in a row now, with a record of 29, 1, and 2. The varsity team ended up with an overall record of 34 and 4, breaking a school record for the number of wins, and conference undefeated record of 14-0 for the second year in a row. The losses were tough, but she wanted to bring attention that 2 of our losses were against teams that played in the state 3A and 4A championship. We actually hosted a tournament at our school, and the team we lost to actually won the 4A Matea Valley. These girls should be very proud of their accomplishments this year. High school volleyball is about coming together with your high school friends and family, trusting your teammates, coach, and making memories that'll last forever. As a coach, that's what we want. We had 4 players selected to the all-conference team, Maddie Buckley, Mackenzie, and Megan, and also Bella Rio. Mia was named honorable mention, all conference. 2 players were selected for all area, Maddie Buckley and Megan. Maddie Buckley was special mention all state for the spring 2021 season, and we're still waiting for the all state selections this fall. The accomplishment that I'm most proud of would be having all 15 players named, oh, she did mention it. That's volleyball. Thank you.
We also had some incredible results in girls swimming, and they are not able to join us this evening. So I'm going to hold because it's worth bringing them back so that you can meet and celebrate them in person. So we'll do that at a later time, but just wanted you to know we did not forget that. It has been an absolute joy to have athletics going on, sports activities, clubs at our building. It's just to be able to do high school again has just been an absolute thrill. It's always a privilege and an honor to bring these students forward to you guys, and just remember all the reasons why we're proud to be Kaneland Knights, but especially these that we represented tonight. So thank you to all of you who showed up this evening and for all your accomplishments this semester. Thank you.
Congratulations, everyone. Thank you.
Our last presenter tonight is Mr. Schmidt from Harder Middle School, our principal. Mr. Schmidt. Welcome.
Thank you, everybody, for having us here. For Harder Middle School, the boys cross-country team finished their season with a first-place finish in the conference meet. Evan Wilden was the individual winner of the boys race. Caden Kaiser took 5th place. Jonas Sartain took 10th place. And Carson Kaiser took 11th place, all finishing in the top 15 to earn all-conference status. This was followed with the boys cross-country finishing 5th out of 15 teams at the IESA sectional meet. Evan Wilden was the top finisher with a 7th place finish out of 100 runners. Evan also qualified for state, where he represented Kaneland at the IESA state cross-country meet. In the girls cross-country conference meet, Grayson Cole finished in 3rd place, Natalie Atenko finished in 10th place, and Danielle Bauer finished in 11th, and all 3 were all conference. The girls cross-country team also finished 9th out of 15 teams at the IESA sectional meet. Moving on to volleyball, both of the 7th and 8th grade girls volleyball teams entered the NCJC conference tournament as the #1 seeds. After 3 challenging matches, the Knights were victorious and both teams walked away as conference champions. Lastly, Harder Middle School golf was excited to have 2 golfers qualify for IESA state. This was Brady Brown and Evan Johnson. Overall, it was an exceptional fall sports season for Harder Middle School. Echoing what Mrs. Meyer said, it's great to be able to have sports again and be able to provide those opportunities for our students, because that's part of what school is about. So very proud of all of our athletes and what they did and how they represented Kaneland, and very proud of our Knights. Thank you.
This is what that concludes our board salutes for this evening.
Okay, thank you very much. Board members, anything? Okay. So this is the first opportunity for public comment at the meeting. There are normally 2 opportunities for public comment, one at the beginning and one at the end of the meeting. Tonight we actually have 3, with the one in the middle being specifically regarding the tax levy during that public hearing. So this is a general public comments section, and we have 4 people signed up, actually. The board values public input to inform our decision-making and to provide information and insight into what is happening throughout the district. Board meetings are held to conduct the business of the Board of Education and are required by law to take place in public. However, they are not public forums. We use the public comment section as an opportunity to listen to our stakeholders. For that reason, the board does not enter into a debate or respond to questions spontaneously or without proper investigation and deliberation. In most cases, concerns or questions requiring follow-up will be referred to the superintendent. If you choose to speak publicly, we ask that you do so at the microphone. State your name and the village of residence or your association with us for the record, and limit your comments to 3 minutes or less so that all who wish to speak may have that opportunity. Public comment is a maximum of 30 minutes with a 20-minute total length of time for any one subject. You are encouraged to seek a private appointment to discuss matters concerning individual students or staff members. While public education can be an emotional issue, and understandably so, the board strives to maintain a certain level of decorum at the meeting. Those who speak are expected to maintain a tone of courtesy and civility. So we will start tonight with a request that was emailed in due to health reasons. So Dr. Fuchs, if you would read that one, please.
Thank you. This message is from Jennifer Hogan Shaw. Ms. Hogan writes, I will first start with the equity audit. Can you inform us as to when we will be able to see the results of the audit? I believe they were going to be posted on the website. Therefore, I ask that we can get information first via an email that the results will be posted and when. Secondly, I would like to know what steps and/or plans you have in place in regards to the safety and security of our children when at school. This has always been my #1 concern for my daughter. It is sad to see that we have put so much funding and time and effort into COVID testing and hiring third-party vendors than we have into taking the necessary precautions as best we can to prevent mass school shootings. Speaking of third-party vendors we have on site for COVID tests, are these third-party vendors getting background checked before stepping foot onto school grounds? It is proven that more school-aged children have died in mass school shootings than COVID. You can't even compare the two. Therefore, I would like to know what our school board is doing to protect our children. Have they looked into all the laws that Illinois already has in place to start this process? I am asking that our school district take a stance and speak up to the state and ISB and demand that further action needs to be taken to protect our children while at school. I would recommend to start hiring retired police officers and/or vets, background check first, and have them on site at each school, or metal detectors at all school door entrances. But this is your job to figure out what the best course of action to take to protect our children is, not mine. That is why I am asking what steps you have taken, and if none have been taken, why? And what are you going to do to ensure the safety of our children while they are in your care? I would like to see this be a topic of discussion at one of your board meetings. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Hogan, for the comment that you sent in. The next speaker is Craig, and the last name starts with a T, and if you can tell me when you get to the microphone, I'm afraid I will mispronounce because I.
Is it okay if I look this up a little bit?
Oh, sure.
Apologize for the chicken scratch. My name is Craig Tenola. I have two kids in John Stewart, kindergarten and first grade. No evidence is what I wanted to talk about today. That's the theme of the deep dive into attempting to find non-ideological information on mask wearing, specifically as it pertains to adverse health effects on young children, as my children are young, and it concerns me. In a recent tweet from ASHA, retweeted and promoted by Kaneland John Shields, says, "Rest assured there is no evidence that mask use prevents or delays speech and language development. They presented no evidence to back up this claim." And throughout the entire article, it ended with, "When it comes to use of face masks, the bottom line is safety first. Masks reduce transmission of COVID-19 and can make in-person schooling possible." So no evidence given, and it's as if the assumption is that because there's no evidence, it must be confirmed fine, ending with an ultimatum as if can't do masks, then we can't go to school. I'd like to discuss the safety first statement. Recently, the available scientific data was compiled in a study from the Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health. The question posed was, is a mask covers the mouth and nose free from undesirable side effects in everyday use and free of potential hazards? The abstract reads, in part, up until now, there has been no comprehensive investigation as to the adverse health effects masks can cause. The aim was to find, test, and evaluate and compile scientifically proven related side effects of wearing masks. We evaluated evidence changes in respiratory physiology and mask wearers with significant correlation of O2 drop and fatigue, a clustered co-occurrence of respiratory impairment and O2 drop, N95 and CO2 rise, N95 and O2 drop, headache, respiratory impairment, and temperature rise. They refer to the psychological and physical deterioration as a mask-induced exhaustion syndrome, MIES. In a recent 2020 study, significantly impaired thinking and impaired concentration were found in all mask types, including fabric, surgical, and N95 after only 100 minutes of wearing the mask. According to these studies, undesired phenomena accompanied by wearing masks occur in the field of internal medicine, including neurology, psychology, psychiatry, dermatology, dentistry, sociology, epidemiology, and pediatrics, just to name a few. I've provided about 50 USB sticks with scientific studies that I've read and referenced here today, along with scientific studies on the potential physical and psychological harm of regular mask wearing on young children, studies showing the inability of masks to prevent COVID transmission in schools, and studies that show that children are exceedingly low risk of harm from COVID. And I encourage everyone to take one. It's on my table over there. There's enough for everybody. I believe it's time for a return to normalcy in Illinois schools, and I believe the school board should be fighting for that. Not remote learning or masks or arbitrary guidelines. COVID is now an endemic. It's no longer a pandemic. It's here to stay, and we're going to have to learn how to live with it safely, and we are doing damage to our young children. The evidence shows that we have allowed the mitigation measures to become far more harmful to the children than the disease itself. That's about all. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. The next speaker is Scott Starkel.
Hi, my name is Scott Starkel. I have 3 kids in the district, And first, I'd like to congratulate Beth Starkel on her years of service, and looking forward to her retirement and wish her all the best. Secondly, all the athletes and the academic successes that we experience, I'd like to congratulate all of them as well. This is part of their lives that they should be building on and that they should never forget. Thirdly, I was unable to attend several weeks ago when an employee was terminated for non-compliance with an executive order. And I know the board was a split vote, and I am disgusted about the board's actions here, and you guys should be ashamed of yourselves, and heaven forbid you guys ever run into such an encounter and find yourself on the other end of this. You terminated a person for doing what she thought was right. So shame on you guys. Fourth, the COVID requirements. I am shocked to find out that even now the district does not know what the requirements are for return to learn, and that they can't coordinate with the county. The county is non-communicating, and there's very little interest in getting the kids back to school despite what they say. So if any of you want to have a conversation with me about it, I have firsthand experience, please reach out. I would gladly talk to every one of you guys. It is a disgrace. Lastly, I do want to thank you for your time, and I wish you guys a safe and Merry Christmas.
Thank you for your comments. The next speaker is Tonya Grosinger.
Hey everybody, Tonya Grosinger from Maple Park. So what I have with me right now are the new sex ed standards that are going to be implemented starting August of 2022, so next school year. Not sure how much any of you have really dove into this, but I printed these. These are the national standards. And I just want to share a couple things with you that our kids are going to be learning. This first set that I'm going to tell you about is from K through second grade. They are going to be learning and defining the reproduction and explaining all of the living things that may have the capability to reproduce. They are going to discuss the range of ways that people can express their gender and how their gender role and stereotypes may limit behavior. They are going to define sexual abuse and identify behaviors that would be considered child sexual abuse. Let's see. Sorry, trying to find the one. I'll just go on to the 3rd through 5th. Would be discussing masturbation, and they would need to be able to identify things of that nature by the end of 5th grade. So that is that, and I don't know about you guys, but I don't want my 4th and 5th graders learning about masturbation. The other thing is it's really unclear whether or not, if you would choose to adopt these standards as a district, do you have to teach every single thing? Or if you can pick and choose which parts of these you are going to put into the curriculum. From my understanding, you cannot choose. If you choose to adopt it, you teach all of it. You cannot pick in between. Some of the ones that I'm really upset about are the ones for the 6th through 8th. They want to teach different ways for contraception, and there are 4 that don't involve prescription. Abstinence, which is fine. Condoms, the after birth control, after contraception, and my favorite one is the withdrawal method. I don't know if any of you know anybody that is product of that. I have many friends who got pregnant that way. It doesn't work. It's not a form of contraception. So I don't want my kids being taught that that is what would stop pregnancy or prevent pregnancy in any sort of way, because it doesn't. And that is something that they need to know is a form of contraception by the end of 8th grade. So I really urge you to take a look and see what these standards are before voting on it before the next school year. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. So there are no other signups, but are there any other public comments from those in attendance? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on then. Tonight's consent agenda contains the following action items: the approval of parameters for accounts payable and payroll from December 2021, the approval of the treasurer's report from November of 2021, the approval of minutes of the November 29th, 2021 regular meeting, the approval of resignations, terminations, and employment of staff, the approval of the destruction of audio recordings from executive sessions from June 2020, and the following informational items: the student suspension data report and the Freedom of Information Act FOIA report. So I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
And a roll call, please.
Mrs. Junk?
Aye.
Mr. Carey?
Aye.
Dr. Lawler?
Aye.
Mr. Mankivsky?
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons? Aye. Mrs. Witt?
Aye. Motion carries 6-0. We'll move on now to the first item of new business, which is the public hearing and the approval of the 2021 tax levy. And if you'll bear with me for one moment. Okay, so I am going to call the public hearing on the Kaneland District 302 tax levy to order at 7:47 p.m., and I will ask Dr. Fuchs to give us a brief overview.
Thank you, Mrs. Witt. With regard to the tax levy, the board approved the tentative tax levy in October. There have been no changes to the final tax levy since that time. If you will recall, specifically the amounts are as follows: the Education Fund, $37,875,000. Operations and Maintenance Fund, $6 million. Transportation, $1,825,000. Working Cash Fund, $100,000. Municipal Retirement Fund, $700,000. Social Security, $900,000. Special Education, $4,400,000, for a total operating levy of $51,800,000. This represents a 4.99% over the taxes that were extended last year. Additionally, we have the Bond and Interest Fund for $12,356,540. This represents a 0.7% decrease for a total levy increase of 3.85%. While the board is asking for a 3.85% increase, please know that we do not expect to receive that amount. We expect to receive approximately 2.4% more than last year in our operating funds. The money received from this levy will help to provide the programs, services, operating costs, and other expenditures in the 2022-2023 school year.
Okay, thank you very much. So the way this works now is we have a public comment section now. Then I will close the public hearing, and then the board will discuss and ask questions of Dr. Fuchs if there are any. So at this time, I will ask if there are any public comments. We now invite public comments on the proposed 2021 tax levy only, keeping in mind the public comments guidelines stated earlier in the meeting, noting that the board does not generally respond to public comments at this time. Any discussion would usually take place after the hearing as the levy is discussed and adopted. Are there any public comments on the tax levy? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public comment, and I will close the public hearing at 7:50. And now if board members have comments or questions for Dr. Fuchs.
Can you just, the question I always ask, please, if you could?
why we can ask for whatever we want, but we only get.
Yep. So we are under the tax cap as a local government unit. We are allowed to ask for whatever we want. We limit how much we ask for. We generally try to stay under 5%. However, even though we are asking for 4.99%, we do only expect to receive approximately 2.4%. The reason why we ask for more than what we expect to receive is because all of the information that we base our levy on is based on estimates at this time of the year. If the estimates are too low, we would never be able to ask for more money from that lost money in the future. However, we can ask for as much as we want. It can never be too high because we are restricted under the tax cap law to receive only the CPI or 5%, whichever is less, plus new growth.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we could ask for the moon, but we only get what we are legally
Are
able
afforded.
to receive.
That is correct.
So basically, we're keeping up with inflation.
That is exactly what CPI is. It's the Consumer Price Index, and it is an indicator of inflation, and that is part of the limit in the limiting tax rate formula.
And this hasn't happened yet, but assuming that the interest rates come in over 5 at the end of this year, have you heard any rumblings through the state as to what they would do?
We would still be limited at 5%. If CPI comes in higher, they have not discussed changing the law based on a possible high inflationary number.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? Okay. If there are none, I'll entertain a motion that the board approves the 2021 tax levy in the amount of $51,800,000 for the operating levy and the amount of $12,356,540 for the bond and interest levy, for a total levy amount of $64,156,540.
So moved. Second.
And a roll call, please.
Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Mrs. Junk.
Aye. Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. I will file this levy this week, and we will be in compliance. I will file it both at DeKalb County and King County.
Thank you, and thank you for all your work and your department's work on that.
Thank you.
We'll move on now to new business item number 2, which is the financial projections presentation. Also you.
You're right. All right, there we go. Oops, thank you. There we go. Perfect. So at the last board meeting, what I shared with the board at that time was what the board could expect for me to include in the initial draft of our 5-year financial projection model. I've added in all of those assumptions that we talked about. I'll review a few of those tonight and share with you where we're at. Again, this is a part of the process for planning for next school year, the 22-23 school year. The levy will bring in the majority of the money, but there are other monies that we're going to talk about. I use a software tool called Fivecast. With Fivecast, it's very powerful financial planning, and we can develop a multi-year financial plan. The benefit of a multi-year financial plan is that we can watch trends. The benefit of being able to watch trends is that we can then make decisions and make changes in our expenditures before the trend comes to fruition. So we can head off any problems that we foresee, or if we foresee a positive trend, we can plan on how to best utilize our resources. This tool also allows us to compare and have what-if analyses. What if we did this? What if we did that? And I can bring those responses back to the board. It uses detailed budget and performance data. We use the budget preparation, and we use it from our accounting system. And it also has great stakeholder reporting. Inside the model, I have 5 years of audited annual financial report, revenues, expenditures, and fund balances. So those are the actual numbers from our past 5 years in terms of our performance. Additionally, I have in the model our FY22, that's our current budget, the general ledger, so that we can model or build off of it. I have all of our tax levies for 5 years, extensions and rates, the EAV, or equalized assessed valuations, our enrollment, and then district assumptions. These are some of the data elements that are included in our financial forecast. With regard to our revenue budget, our current operating budget is about $65.8 million. That's this year's budget. As you can see in the pie chart, which looks different on there than here, that's a function of Google Slides instead of the PowerPoint. If you look at the handout, you can see that property taxes make up about 75% of our budget. Our next largest is the evidence-based funding, which is state at 11%, and then we get about 3% of federal funding. So with those dollars, we then build our assumptions to see what it's going to look like over the next 5 years. If you'll remember, the tax levy formula has what's called a CPI, the CPI, you guys, Tony, these slides are all when it converted. Is there anything you can do? Can you make it back into the PowerPoint? Do you know?
Julianne, it looks like they're just missing maybe the numbers on top.
Say it again, Meg.
It looks like they're just missing the numbers on the top, like the percentages.
Yeah. The years at the bottom look to be wrong too.
Oh, you are correct, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. It looks like it totally converted it. You guys, I'll go ahead and use our handouts. If you need something to holler, I just would prefer that the audience see what we're looking at. Yeah.
Do they know if they
Sure,
can
now that
change
I'm
it?
back.
I'm not sure.
I mean, it's coming
They're-
through okay on my laptop, and it's from,
Same.
it's from what Beth sent out.
Yep.
Same.
Yeah.
Mine looks fine.
Yeah.
I apologize.
It's okay.
No, it's like-
5
it's
minute
good.
recess.
Everyone can bear with us for a moment while we see if we can get you a better view of the slides. Okay.
You think you got it, Chris? Thank you. Okay. Thanks, Kendra. Oh, good. Can maybe pick it up off of that.
I'll just go into the packet.
Yep.
Okay, good.
And then maybe it'll be in PDF or something. Beautiful. You're in the right place. Scroll, yep, and now scroll to the right. And you can pick it up, keep going, right there. That should do it. Let's see if I can, yep.
Yep.
Can I take over from there then? Yeah, I can just slide it this way. Excellent. Thank you very much, Tony. I appreciate it. Here, I can even make it a little bit bigger.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you. All right, so that is the pie chart for the source of revenues. Where I was headed next is the tax levy, as I mentioned, provides 75%. So this CPI is important because we have to project out what it will be. What I did is I used a 5-year average at 2%. You see 2 different colored bars. The darker color are actuals. The lighter color are the projected numbers. Please remember, in 2022, in the model, I currently am using 2%. But I'm pretty sure that in the middle of January, when it gets announced, that it'll be much higher than that. When I learn what the actual is, I'll replace it and I can share with the board the results of doing that. But it cannot go higher than 5%. Similarly, the new EAV growth, which is outside of the tax cap, I have the darker bars, which are the actuals. The lighter bars are the estimates. We know that in 2021, it's going to be about 9.2 million. And then I have used 9 million for the remaining years. In March or April, we'll get our final tax levy, and I will be able to put the 2021 actual number into the model. But for now, I have to use an estimate. And so you can see how we build our estimates then for our revenues.
Just out of curiosity, why 9? Why is 9 the estimate?
Yep. If you look here, new construction, the average is 8.1 million.
Okay.
But it keeps going higher than 8.1. So I looked at this trend here, but yet I knew that we were coming down a little. So I estimated about 9. It's higher than what these 2 years were, but it's lower than these 3. It's a best guess.
Oh, I was just, because
Yep.
I saw the 8 and I just was curious, but yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Makes
The
sense.
good news for that question, let's look at this next slide. What I've given you is the revenue sensitivity. So CPI is much more impactful. If CPI goes up by 1% or down by 1%, it's about a $500,000 change into our revenue stream. But the new property that you're asking about every $1 million that I'm off. So say, for example, I've used 9 million, but it comes in at 10, that brings in about 53,000. So I feel like it's a fair estimate for what we're doing at this point. That is our primary source of local revenue. We have 2 other sources of local revenue. One is our corporate personal property replacement taxes, otherwise known as CPPRT. Some school districts get a whole lot more money than we do for this. Ours is only about $460,000. I will learn the actual amount in the middle of summer. It usually comes out around July 15th. So what I've been doing for many years is I will use the number from the prior year as a placeholder until I find the real number, and then I adjust it. At this point, all other local revenue is projected at the same amounts as our current budget. Those local revenues would be like your sports fees, your registration fees, your lunch fees, anything else that you get locally. That's the local revenue. We also have state revenue and federal revenue. So our state revenue, we currently get 7.36 million there. I'm missing a 0. For state revenue, our estimated Ebf funding. Please note that 2 years ago, we did not get any extra, but prior to that, and then this year, we got a little over 100,000. And again, right now, we don't know what that will be, but we'll learn that in the summertime. So when we get it to the summer and we hear what it's going to be, I'll update the board. Other state categoricals, we get approximately $4 million on our reimbursements for special education and transportation. Those numbers vary limited amounts from year to year, depending on our prior year expenditures. So again, those amounts I actually don't learn until fall, after you're about a quarter of the way through the fiscal year. So we make our best guess for that as well. Federal revenue, I've got it projected at our current levels. The federal revenue varies even less than state revenue. So we've been pretty consistent with our federal revenue. We have lost a little bit in Title I, but then another one went up. So it goes up and down, but for our financial projections, we use what is currently budgeted. And then in the springtime for our grants, when we learn what they're going to be, I can put that actual number in the projection, or by that time, we might be building our budget already, and I'll put it in the actual budget. That pretty much covers our financial projections on the revenue side. Before I move to expenditures, are there any questions from the board on the revenues and what I've done in the model? All right, then let's move on to expenditures. Interestingly, our expenditure budget is $65.75 million for this year. If you look, salaries and benefits make up a primary portion, and it's almost in the same amount as our tax levy. So that's kind of interesting. 58% on salaries and 15% on benefits. The next largest expenditure category are our purchase services. The reason why that's such a large expenditure is because we outsource our custodial services. So when you outsource a service, it goes into that piece of the pie, and because we have custodians in all of our buildings, that's quite a large expenditure, and so that's what you're seeing there. Supplies and materials are about 6%, capital at about 2%. That other objects, that represents tuition. That could be one of two kinds: tuition to Fox Valley Career Center, or outplaced tuition for our students with special needs, makes up about 7% of our budget. Then, in order to build our financial projections, here are the things that I have included in the model as an assumption. First of all, salaries, as you know, I just told you, makes up a very large portion. So the more accurate I can be on salaries, the more accurate our financial projections will be. We have an existing contract with our Kaneland Education Association, that's our teachers, certified staff. We know that the next 2 years, their contracts will go up about 3.34 and 4.29%, but then we don't know what it will be after that. So as we talked about at the last board meeting, I have used 2% as a placeholder. The 2% is the same number that I'm using on the revenue side for our CPI, because that has the biggest impact. And that's something that the board had me do, Ryan, what did you say, 3, 4, 5 years ago? Switch over to 2% to the number that matches the CPI? We've been using it
5 years?
Yeah, 5 years. So it's a almost long-standing practice. The next thing is our SPEAK contract, which is our support staff. That contract is up this year, so we don't have any actual numbers to be able to use for next year. So again, I've used the CPI as a placeholder for salary increases for that group of employees. Lastly, then, we have the administration and all educational support staff that are not in SPEAK, and I've used a 2% placeholder for that. Of all of our salaries, 1% represents about $383,000. Each year, I build in a little bit of money, about $125,000 for lane movement. So the salary increase includes a teacher who gets a salary increase for working the next year, just like you would get if you got a raise. But people that are in KEA have an additional opportunity to earn more money. They do that by receiving additional education. We call that lane movement. And so when they reach certain places, they get a raise for achieving that educational level. So I have to put in a little extra money each year for lane movement. The model also allows me to put in changes to our staffing levels. Here are the changes that I've made for staffing levels that we know about. I believe it was either the last board meeting or the one right before that, we approved some positions. Those positions are not in our current budget because we didn't plan for them. They were needs that arose later in the school year. What those are is a 1.0 early childhood teacher, a 0.5 social worker, and a 1.0 paraprofessional. So I've put those into the model because we probably are going to need them for next year. And I didn't want it to be short if that's what we are going to need. Additionally, we are planning to open up the Ignite Academy in 23-24. Right now, we are estimating that that academy may take about 16 certified FTEs or positions. We don't know for sure, but again, we didn't want to be short on the expenditure side. It's going to show a large gap in the final outcome, but again, that's the benefit of this exercise, is that we can see what the model says, and then we can make decisions and plans accordingly. Health benefits, I've got a 5% annual increase for that. Purchase services, I've lowered that, the custodial contract at 2%. Typically, I have used 3%. However, we are having difficulties getting custodians, and so I don't think that a full 3% is accurate, so I lowered that. Similarly, our special education tuition, that does not seem to be going up as fast as it once was, and so I've lowered that to 1% as well. And we can watch that. If we learn that it is going to increase, I can always add more, but right now it's been pretty steady. With regard to supplies, capital outlay, and other, in the model, I've included enough money for the school buses so that we can get 5 each year with 1-year-old replacements. Our capital outlay, I've put in there $2 million for the 2023 school year because that's what the board approved, but then I dropped it back down to $1 million after that. And we go through that exercise each fall as well, where we can decide if we want to add more or not to capital outlay. But for now, I've got it at the $2 million and then 111. Curriculum, I'm keeping steady at $400,000. Technology, I'm keeping steady at $550,000. The one thing that was in a previous model that I've crossed off, we had in there for 2022 and 2023, $225,000 for our teacher laptop replacements, but I took that out because of Tim's grant, and so that saved us that money in those 2 fiscal years. So that's no longer in the model as it had been in the past. Yep, Aaron?
When will it go back in the model?
Probably 4 years after this year.
So there's a
Yep.
cushion there. Okay.
Yep. And when we put it back in, I would like to have another discussion with the board.
Sure.
The board, there was a strong feeling on the board at the time that we did this, that we split it over 2 years. I will continue to advocate for our director of technology, who would really like to see it all in 1 year, so that the teachers all have the same model of laptop, which helps for their department when they are supporting that.
Sure.
Again, we don't have to have that conversation tonight,
Sure.
but I definitely want to keep that on the forefront for the sake of our director of technology.
I just wanted to ask, because, we always try to think of things being sustainable and long-term, right? And so although we have the grant, which is amazing and it's wonderful, and I'm not knocking that, I'm just
Right.
saying we have to think about long-term as well, right? So,
Absolutely. That was one of the first questions I asked when I heard we got that large grant, is how can we sustain?
Sure.
So, you betcha. Thank you. And Mr. Wolf also was on the same page with that question.
Good.
So, yep. So some things, additional assumptions. In the model, I have no changes to the tax cap. Every year there's legislation that could be potentially changing, but so far it hasn't. I wanted to let you all know I have all of our retirement savings built into the model, so we don't need to review any retirement information. It's already in there. It also, the model assumes that this year's budget is an accurate base for projections. That's why every quarter, every month, I tell you, I show you, where are we at, where are we gonna be, so that you can keep track of that in your head in terms of, is it an accurate base? And if not, what's happening? ESSER 3. ESSER 3 is the $1 million federal money. We need to get that into the model, but it's not going to impact it because it's $1 million in and $1 million out. So at this time, the cabinet is still working on exactly how we want to best utilize that, but I want to assure the board not having it in there is not a concern. And then lastly, the Ignite Academy expenses. The only ones that I have in there right now are the FTEs. And then also in the summer projects, there's a few doors and windows. That part of it's in there, but there's going to be some supplies and classroom materials that are going to be needed. That stuff is still being worked on. And so once we get that information, we can start to plug that into the model. This is a new slide that I've not done before, but I wanted to share with the board. This is just one piece of our puzzle tonight. Here is some this information is financial information that will be coming to the board in January. We're going to talk about school fees. I'll have a second quarter budget report. That's good because that's half a year, so we can get a better idea of where we're at. In the middle of January, we will learn the CPI, which will affect the 23-24 school year. I'll be able to bring you the ESSER 2 expenditure plan in January. I'll have a school bus purchase request. We still need to do the administrative cost cap waiver because of various retirement contracts. And then I'll have the approval of the Fox Valley fees for their use of our Kaneland facilities. So I wanted to make sure that you understand. Again, tonight, I'm not asking for any decisions, just information, but here's what's on the docket coming soon.
Okay, I have a quick question. So with the school bus purchase request, will you bring it to us in January and we'll have the opportunity then to look at it and make changes if we wanted more or fewer buses purchased, or do you need to know before the January meeting if we wanted to make changes to that number?
You know what? I can learn at the January meeting.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
So that, and that will give you time to process tonight's information and then make decisions accordingly.
Okay.
Yep. So here is the big spreadsheet. And Ryan, I actually remembered down here at the bottom to convert the months into days, so I was very excited about that.
It's the little things, isn't it?
It is, once a year, you know. So with that being said, the first column is our current budget. And as you can see, we're showing a deficit of about 1.4. What I want to tell you, and I'll show you on another slide in just a moment, this deficit is cumulative. So, say for example, we get our budget a little closer aligned to balanced, you could then subtract that 1.4 off of the 3.4 that is showing for next year. Additionally, at this time of the year, we are focused on the FY23 budget. The rest of it is to look at for trends. But we want to make sure that we're making good decisions for FY23. And then as you can see, it does show a deficit, but again, I want to point out that that deficit is cumulative, so any deficit that you take care of on the front end has a positive impact all the way through that row. In FY22, you are starting off with about 59 days of fund balance. It drops to 38 and it goes negative after that. But if we end up and or land in a more positive manner, then all of that information would shift. The next slide, of course, shows the visual of what you're seeing. Okay, and this budget year here starts and then it kind of just goes down. but we're going to make decisions so that we curtail the drop off of that fund balance, because we're not going to let it go down like that. But if we didn't do anything, this is what would happen. But we know that it's not going to, because we're going to make decisions. Let me repeat, I added this slide to help you. So we know that for FY23, the projected deficit is about 3.4. We know that it's cumulative. And again, that means if we end this year with a balanced budget, the deficit projected in 22-23 will be closer to the $2 million mark. And if you'll recall, we knew that it was going to be about $1 million over, because the board approved the administrative recommendation for an extra $1 million in capital projects for this upcoming summer because of our great need of that. So what my point might be is, yes, it might be closer to $2 million. We knew about $1 million, which leaves us about $1 million, which in a budget of about $65 million, we can start to tweak things to squeeze and make sure that we are in good shape for the 22-23 school year.
So the key takeaway is that, and board members probably know this, is that this isn't something that we're saying, this is the way it is, this is the way it's going to be in those future years. This is a working, fluid document that shows, where we are at a certain snapshot, and we, based on assumptions, and we fill it in. And we use this as a planning tool in order to offset some of those deficits and things. We make decisions based on this, on these statistics, so that we can offset and get out ahead of some of those things. So I just didn't want anyone to think that we're saying this is exactly what the deficits are going to be in those future years, because we will be taking action to make changes.
That's correct. And what I would tell you is, look at last board meeting. I put a historical document in there, and you will see that we had 4 years of positive fund balances at the end, and I can assure you they look just like this when we started. And then last year we ended with a small deficit of $247,000. So we make changes along the way in order to curtail, because the board's directive to me recently has been, we don't want to grow the fund balance, and we don't want to use a lot of it. We want to try to get as close as we can to balanced, so that we can maintain what we have, but not grow it and not spend it down too much.
And we still have some actual numbers that are outstanding that will come in, and they may come in under budget, because we usually try to capture.
That's right.
We need, so some of those, I think,
Yeah.
aren't you trending at about 95?
Yes, 95% right now of expenditures.
Okay.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Board members, questions, others?
I guess I have one. So if you take out the 1.5 million that were projected for this year, that puts us next year with a projected deficit of about 2 million, which is about 3% of the budget, and then 3% after it, thereabouts it looks like. I would like to see that number smaller as a projected number, but I think like 1.5, 2 would be much better. But I know that we're not voting on this tonight, but if it was up to me, I'd like to see those numbers smaller. Which would mean, and I'm not saying school buses or just whatever your best judgment is, I would much prefer that that be closer to 2%.
So a target, if the board has consensus, might be closer to 1.5 to 2% of.
That's
Yeah,
Ryan's
try to-
number. Let's see if
Yeah.
we have other numbers.
I'm curious,
Yeah.
because
you need that direction from us now.
it's helpful. I still have to wait for, as you mentioned, the unknown to come in, because some of that can be taken care of pretty quickly depending on that CPI.
So if board members could weigh in on an acceptable amount, or?
Can I ask a question maybe first before I weigh in on amount? And only, this might pertain only to me. I might need to go back to budget school with you, Joanne, so maybe that's what I need to. But what I guess I don't know is, if I take $1.5 million out of this year's deficit and next year's deficit, in my head, I keep thinking, wouldn't that $1.5 million impact other things in next year's deficit as well? Like, or is it just Is nothing connected?
It is connected and it's cumulative.
Right,
So
I
if
get the
you did what
cumulative,
you
but-
just said,
Yeah.
that would take care of 3 million of it, which would only leave you 473.
Okay, that's what I was thinking, right?
Yes,
So
it is.
It's not just a straight subtraction, right? There's
Right.
more to that, okay.
Yeah.
That's why the number to me then isn't as, and I'm not just, the number isn't to me as crucial as that we're making sure we're looking at those connections to see those trends.
Yep.
Okay, so I don't have to go back to budget school.
I was just going to
Good.
say,
You got it.
You did budget school. So, anybody else want to weigh in on?
With that said, I don't feel strongly enough to not go to 2 either. Like, I think it's always good to lower that number if we can, but yeah.
And this is the initial.
Sure.
We can modify assumptions, number one, as they become actuals, and number two, through our decision-making, like you've asked. Yep.
So does anyone else, besides Mr. Carey, have an interest in giving direction to stay within a certain number at this time?
I would agree with Mr. Carey that we should put it between 1.5% and 2%.
Okay. Anyone else? Meg or Jennifer?
I mean, being the newbie, I'm trusting, I mean, the fact that, like you even said, you've been accurate 95%, you know, so your history there is good for us to follow. But do we have to make that decision like this month? Like, what if we can, is there a period of time that you can estimate that, like, we're going to have more numbers in, that we can then maybe make that decision better?
Yep. So that happens from now until summer.
Right.
Until you get the tentative budget in June. There will be new information every month about something.
Yeah. So, I mean, I agree with Mr. Carey, like, let's keep an eye on that, but is it something that we have to do tonight? Or is it something that maybe, because you said more numbers are coming in January, we've got more coming throughout, you know, the next few months. Can we just, I guess, definitely keep an eye on it?
Yep, and that's why I added that slide of what is coming.
Yeah.
Some of those are bigger swing items than others, like the CPI. The other one that's a big deal that we don't get till April is our health insurance renewal. So if that goes too high, that messes with this. If it's lower, that's a benefit. That gets us closer to your 1.5% to 2%, just like that. So there are some bigger ticket items in there that have a greater impact than some of the others, but I definitely, no decisions have to be made tonight, more so the understanding of where we are and where we want to head.
Meg, is that good? Okay. Ryan, are you comfortable with that if we just keep an eye on it? Because it sounds like that's consensus and not giving,
I
mean,
am.
we're giving formal, you know, direction to say keep an eye on it and that we all would like to see it, you know, lowered. But to actually give a number at this point, I don't hear that coming from other board members except Mr. Mankowski. So,
I guess my comment to that would be, I know that we have a lot of bigger purchases that come up. The school buses are in January. There's a bunch of things. As long as we're seeing that number staying within the 2-ish% or 2 million, I'm comfortable. I just don't want to lose sight of that because budgeting in school districts is extremely disjointed. It's you get one thing now and something else later, and it's hard to keep it all together in one place for someone like me. So as long as that information is contained in your school bus proposal, which is coming, or other things, I'm perfectly fine with that.
Thank you.
and we'll have an opportunity like on each of those things to discuss and make changes incrementally.
That is true. Yep.
Thank you.
Anything else from other board members? We good? All right. Thank you very much again. You've been busy.
Thank you.
All right, so now we are on J3, which is the approval of the school calendars for 2022-23 and 23-24, which is new to do two in a row.
It is. The administration is very excited. I wish Dr. Layden could be here because it truly was his idea and request that we start to do this and look at it, which I support fully. So we have two school year calendars in front of you, the 22 and 23 and 23 and 24. Let me share with you some of the highlights of the calendars because they're consistent over those 2 years. And what we're hoping by doing a second year this early is that it will give our families and our staff an opportunity to plan ahead, which, if you know teachers, planning is our specialty. So, all right. First of all, student attendance. This past year, we started a week earlier than this, so we are happy to recommend that we go back to an August 17th start date. The benefit of this is it is consistent with Mid-Valley guidelines. Mid-Valley is our special education cooperative. Fox Valley is our career center. Those are schools where students from 5 or 6 different school districts attend, and it is very helpful when the start date is consistent for all of the students in that school. The last day of school, if we do not use snow days, will be May 26th. And again, we have corresponding dates. The one thing I would say is in the 22-23 school calendar, we have a mandatory election day holiday in November, but you don't have that in the 23-24, so there's one day different there in November. We will continue to start the year with 2 Teacher Institute days. Students will not attend the entire week of Thanksgiving. We will follow the calendar guidelines for winter break and spring break. I do want to point out with winter break, it is different than it has been in the past few years. We will end the semester midweek, which is December 21st. But then we will have the whole week off between the Christmas holiday and the New Year holiday, and the whole week off that first week of January, as opposed to going back on January 2nd or 3rd. So that is something different that parents would want to pay attention to. Spring break continues to be the last full week of March, and that is consistent with Kane County and Mid-Valley schools. With the exception of August 15 through 19, November 1 through 5, and December 19 to 21, there are no other weeks in the school calendar where students attend only 3 days. We are trying to balance the trimesters, quarters, and semesters as much as possible. It will also end the second quarter and first semester prior to winter break, which was something that we started a few years back and has been supported by both our middle school and our high school.
And we can still do that with even with the later start date in the summer.
That is correct.
Or fall, I guess.
And what helps us to do that is going into that week of winter break, that 3-day week, that gets us closer to that.
Okay.
Yep. Please note that the Illinois School Code does allow for e-learning days to be implemented. We are continuing to explore those guidelines for state-approved e-learning days. We do not have that at this time. So we are recommending that these calendars be approved as presented and then distributed and posted for planning purposes.
Okay, board member questions? Comments? Brian, you look like you've got something on the tip here.
I'm never a fan of starting school in the middle of August, so it seems like it creeps.
But it's later by a week.
Still the middle of August. I mean, yeah, it was the beginning of August this year. I think it was the 10th or the 11th that we started school this year. So I don't think we should be starting that school and leaving parents and families and kids time to have some of their summer before. I mean, Labor Day was a traditional start of school, or used to be years ago. So, and I get the break of trying to get some finals in before Christmas break, but I still think it's too soon.
And it's also, all the area schools are doing the same thing, all the ones that are part of the
Mid-Valley and Fox
Mid-Valley
Valley.
and Fox Valley Career Center.
But since we're the host of those things, if we were to change our calendar, I'm guessing they would think about it.
We only host a couple Mid-Valley programs, otherwise the Mid-Valley programs are spread throughout the area.
Okay.
But we are the host of Fox Valley.
Yes.
Yep.
So is the history, we're starting earlier because we want to get everything done before Christmas? Or, I know this has been changed years ago, my kids went through this too, so it hasn't
mine
been
too.
after Labor Day since we were kids, so what made that shift years ago?
I would say we've only done the before winter break finishing for 4 years. And I think it had to shift to help keep the semesters balanced. When you have a semester class, especially if it's a core class, you want to make sure that it's as close to having the same number of instructional days, both in the first semester and the second semester. Otherwise, you have students that are getting more or less content depending on which semester their schedule says they take a class. So that balancing is very important at the high school level.
I can say too, I know since 2002, it's been prior to Labor Day.
Yeah.
It hasn't been, I don't know how many years.
Oh, that was yes, that was a long time ago, but it's been like a week and a half before, so.
It did used to be in the last week, I think, or so. It was like in the 25th.
Yeah, that's been a while now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My kids are grown.
I agree, mine too.
Anyway, we can move on.
Okay.
No, thank you for answering that, being new. I didn't know what the history was behind that, so I appreciate
agree.
that.
I don't know how you fix it.
Julianne?
I agree.
Julianne, can you explain again why it goes so far into January? I mean, the break.
You mean the winter break?
Yeah.
That allows for 2 full weeks of a break,
and a
which
half.
is consistent with the other Mid-Valley and Fox Valley schools. They have tried to get 2 full weeks as opposed to 2 partial weeks. So that's why we point out that there are only 3 weeks of the school year where students have 3 days of a week. Otherwise, we try to do 5-day weeks. So otherwise, if you did a partial week in January, you'd have another short week, and sometimes those weeks are seen as not as effective instructionally.
I'm just seeing like the vacation time families are trying to take on top of what they just took for the holiday break because their kids aren't back in school yet. Like most of us are back to school or work that Monday, Tuesday. That's just a lot to add on top of it. But maybe that's just.
They have the same number now, it's just a different time period.
They're back like the day after New Year's this year.
They are,
when the
but
rest
they're
of us
off the
are.
whole week before.
Correct.
Yeah, so it just shifted. It shifted in order to get that semester ended in December.
I see what you're saying.
Am I not understanding? I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
Are you saying it would be better, Meg, if it was the week of the 19th?
Just asking.
Oh, okay. I was just curious.
So the time off between is still the same, you just shifted it? Okay.
That is correct.
Okay. I see where Meg's coming from because
I
parents
mean,
do go
most of
back-
us are taking vacation those 2 weeks already. Now
Yeah.
we're looking at the week after
Right.
New Year's, which most folks are not typically taking vacation.
Yeah, most companies want, your vacation's done by the end of the year, so that's why a lot of people take them at the end of the year, so.
I think it's a choice, you know. We had a lot of parents, and not just our school district, I think other school districts that started earlier say we don't want it that early. So then to start later and then to still get the other thing that our parents have said, at least our high school and parents have said, is that it makes the most sense to have the semester end and the finals taken before they leave for winter break.
Oh, I fully agree with that. Yes.
We do
That's not
have
what
a
I'm
couple,
arguing.
oops, I'm sorry.
What?
I said I fully agree with that. That's not what I'm.
But in order to do that, they have to go longer before Christmas, and that's why to get the full 2 weeks in, it has to go into January.
Or start earlier.
Or start
back to-
earlier in August.
Right.
Do the 2 half.
So it's kind of a double-edged sword, I guess, or?
We do have a couple school districts that this year, they're not coming back in that first week of January. I don't know if this is their first time doing that or not, but we'll be able to watch that and plan accordingly, you know, just see how it goes. We oftentimes have bad weather that first week anyway, so
Yeah.
that could help with some snow issues.
Yeah. Other comments, questions? If we're good, I'll entertain a motion that the Board of Education approves the 2022-23 and 2023-24 school calendars as presented.
So moved.
And I'll second that. And can we have, if there's no other discussion or comments, I'll call for the roll call.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Mrs. Junk.
Abstain.
And Mr. Carey.
No.
Motion carries 4-1-1. Yes.
Yes. I agree.
Okay. Okay. So now we are on J4, which is the approval of policies from press on first reading under our new format, where we, rather than going through 300 pages of policies from press, we're going over the ones that require changes, and we got those highlighted for us in the weekly update. And so, Dr. Fuchs, if you'll lead us through that. that'd
I'd be
great.
happy to. Do you want me to go through the ones that have changes, the ones that were in the update? Is that what you're expecting?
So I think in the update, it was brought up, we could just say we are okay with it and we want to approve it as is, or would, so I guess I need direction from other board members, do it that way, or would you like to go through each one?
The one thing I would remind the board of is Dr. Layden did work with the school attorney to ensure that anything that is recommended and or changed is appropriate for our board and in line with what we are currently doing, if that's the case. Sorry.
I read through them. There's not really much that we have any control over, so I don't see the point in going through things that we can't do anything about. So I'm in favor of
Is
just voting on it
everybody
as is.
Agreement with that? Okay.
Yes.
All right. So, hold on here.
It is, but we can't go on.
And they will come back in consent at the next meeting.
Okay. So, I will entertain a motion that the Board of Education approve the recommended policy changes from press on first reading.
So moved.
Second.
And a roll call, please.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Mrs. Junk.
Aye.
Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. Thank you, and if we can continue to do these this way, if everybody's in agreement, that would be great. If not, let Dr. Layden know. Okay, so that concludes new business, and we are now on the superintendent and board report.
All right, Dr. Layden left me with the list. All right, first of all, we do have the findings from the equity survey or audit. He is planning to meet with the core team in January and will be sharing with the board and community once the core team meets in January. So I believe that does respond to one of the questions from tonight.
Yes.
The Hall of Fame met last week. They reviewed the nominees, the 3 to 4 nominees for this year's Hall of Fame class, and they will be meeting again in February to confirm those.
Bob, you're the liaison. Do you have anything interesting to add to that?
There was, one of the applications was not fully complete, so it was sent back for completion. The The committee was going to meet in February to finalize Hall of Fame nominations and the vote.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
The Kaneland Foundation met last week, December 7th. The next fundraiser will be the Spring Trivia Night, and that will be held on February 5th. The information for the Spring Trivia Night is posted on the Kaneland Foundation website, and we encourage everybody to get involved.
And that is just kanelandfoundation.org, right?
No, I believe it's foundation.kaneland.org.
Oh, it is, okay.
I think, yeah.
Okay.
It could be the other one also, but I don't know that they both go there.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd have to look. Our last day of school for 2021 is this Friday, December 17th. School will resume on Monday, January 3rd, 2022. The Finance Advisory Committee met last week. We discussed school fees, and so when I bring the recommendation to the board in January, I will include some of their feedback. On Friday last week, we hosted a large professional development activity in combination with the Regional Office of Education as well as West Aurora School District. And there were, I think, 8 or 9 school districts in attendance with about 100 people. And the purpose of it was to discuss reunification planning. We regularly update our safety and security plans. This was an ongoing effort to do that. The reunification planning workshop had a speaker from iloveyoguys.org, actually 2 speakers, and they shared with us all of their tools, templates, processes for what it takes on a large scale if you need to evacuate a school and reunify students with their parents, on how to do that most effectively and efficiently. And so today, our security task force actually had a meeting planned, and so we were able to debrief from Friday's workshop, which was wonderful because as your security task force, specifically focusing on Kaneland, we are working toward putting those plans in place to be able to, should we ever need it, hopefully we won't, be able to reunify children with their families safely after, say, even a water main break or power outage if needed. So those plans are in process as a result of the combination workshop where we had, again, almost 100 people in attendance. The last thing then is Mrs. Junk, I think you were going to share your feedback from the III conference. I was mentioning to you earlier that Dr. Lawler, myself, Dr. Layden, Dr. Atkins all had and Mrs. Witt had an opportunity at the last board meeting, and so we look forward to learning what you took back from that conference.
Dr. Lawler, I didn't know you went.
Oh, that's right. You didn't go, did you?
It was Adam.
It was Adam. Sorry, my fault.
That's fine.
I was like, wow.
I know, right? Sorry about that.
Yes, I apologize for missing last meeting when we did the share out. So I went to a couple sessions that were decent this year. I was happier last time. I feel like my sessions were kind of blah. So the first one I went to was Basics of Governance, which I was hoping, obviously I'm not new to the board, but I was hoping to just get different insights based on things that you might learn as a new board member. When I came on, it was in the middle of a session. I got appointed. I wasn't really oriented the way when we bring on 3 new board members, so I felt like I was missing some pieces. The session wasn't really that great, but I got this really awesome book that I would love to share with you all, and I got some great notes out of here. So They talked a lot about just focusing on our mission, our vision, our policies, things that I haven't really seen us do in the 3.5 years I've been on the board. So just some questions on like, are we doing what typically they say boards should be doing? A lot of focus on community engagement and how we're doing that two-way thing beyond public comment. How are we actually engaging with our community members? So those were great, just kind of pieces for thought for me. There's lots of samples of agendas and what different positions do in different districts. So just a great resource to look through and be thinking about. A random note at the end, I don't even know why this came up, was most boards typically, when they do the reorg, that's all they do at that meeting. They don't do business. I haven't seen us do that. Granted, I've only seen it twice, but so I just thought that was an interesting takeaway. I went to one on executive searches. We're still a few years out, but we have some executive searches coming up, and so I just was curious on the process and things like that. And so this one was hosted by IASB, and they, letting us know if they came in and did it for us, what it looks like, what the process is, how much it costs. So just curious on what that process was. So, they laid that all out. They were very transparent about what it costs for each time they come in and do it and what the perks are. And they had some panelists of folks that had used them before and successes that they had. So again, just knowing that we have that coming up in a few years, kind of wanted to start getting that on the radar. So it was good to just see what other schools have done for their executive searches. The last one I went to that was really great was on communication. And so I know Dr. Atkins and I talked about this a bit. We have a number of positions that because of lack of funding, we have not funded, we've made do without, and I think a lot of them internally are felt externally. I think one of them that we see most is communication. We don't have a communications director or person, so I think there's a lot of hardship within that we feel with other positions that we don't have. Externally, that's the one that I think, our parents in our community sees, is that we don't have a communications person. I'm not saying it should be more important, just one of the observations that I've had. So really went through what their communications folks do in different districts. They had a panel with them as well, just different methods that they have for how they communicate, what that person does, how they layer, how they do consistency, just the tension that our community feels when they don't have communication, even if it is always up to date. It's just not always on Friday or always on Monday, just all the different things that a communications person would do, and how that just really helps your relationship with your community. There were a lot of great ideas out there if we had somebody who was dedicated to really think about how we could be communicating better with our constituents. Part of it in terms of the board was they actually would share out what is the board doing monthly or quarterly. They would share out to the community what is happening at the board meetings or what's really high on their docket. Updates to staff after board meetings so that they weren't just kind of waiting to hear and find out. Like the communications person would come to the board meeting, type it up as they go, send it out immediately after, so staff felt like they really knew exactly what happened at the board meeting the next morning. They talked about key communications teams, and one of the tactics in there was every board member was paired up with 6 to 8 teachers or staff throughout the district, and every month they would have a dinner with those 6 to 8, and it just kind of give you a pulse on what's happening, which I thought was awesome, and I would love to see us do. I feel like I don't ever get to interact with our teachers and staff beyond the folks that come to the board meeting. Just community involvement, board members being on other boards and staff folks being on other boards, so that there was really that community feel. They talked a lot about public comment and fails in public comment, and I was really pleased to see that everything they had said you should be doing in public comment, we already do. So nice job, us. And then really just also that chain of command and constantly reaffirming what the board's role is in that chain of command, which I think we see all the time, right? So here's a topic, here's who you go to, and here's the chain. And that example of if you have an issue with your teacher or your class topic, that is not a board topic. That is not what we're here for. And bringing that to the board isn't necessarily productive. And so what is the board's role, and how do we communicate that out regularly to our community for more effective board meetings and letting the community go to where it should be going. So it was just a really good session. I took a lot away. If we ever get a communications person, I would love to hand all of this off. And they were also talking about a free 1-year membership to INSPRA. Julianne, have you ever heard of this?
I was on the INSPRA board a couple years back in 2006, 7, and 8.
Okay.
So I'm well aware of INSPRA.
Okay, awesome. They just talked about how helpful it was and that right now they're doing a first-year membership for free. So I didn't know if that's
It is a
something-
wonderful organization
Awesome.
for school communications.
Yep.
There's just not enough hours in my day.
Absolutely,
Now that
definitely.
I do this position instead of the other.
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate that, but I appreciated the chance to go. My husband and son came up Saturday night, and the minute my son walked in, he developed that croup cough, so we headed out immediately. I did not want that anywhere in the hotel, so didn't get to finish out the way I wanted to on Sunday morning with that last session, but it was really good to go and see other board members and talk to our board members and have different conversations.
Very good.
That's really good, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. Is that it?
Yes, it is, thank
Okay.
you.
Do other board members have anything to add? No? Okay. Topics for future agendas. Aaron?
Yeah,
Sorry, Dr. Lawler.
no, you're fine. So I think we heard it in public comment tonight. I've heard it from a lot of folks, and just maybe it's just people's minds when there's tragedies happening, but a presentation or some kind of communication about what we're doing when it comes to safety and safety precautions, especially in terms of like the worst tragedies, and you were just talking about one of them. And I don't know if that's a presentation we have to have like here at night. Maybe it's a topic for future Friday night update or whatever those are. But you know, I don't know. I just think that we need to revisit that in some way.
Okay, so you'll communicate that to Dr. Layden and he'll let us know, or we can.
Yes, I will.
He'll come back to us and then we can let him know.
If there's
And if you want me to make it more
consensus.
articulate, I can. It was just on the top of my head.
Is there board consensus?
I think, is there board consensus to at least either have it on an update or discuss it, one or the other, and to be determined later? Sure. Okay,
Thank
yes. Anything else from anyone else?
A partially formed one. We spent, like Julia, Dr. Fuchs does a great job of going through the financial pieces of this is why we do this and this is step A, B, and C. I don't feel like we get that on the curriculum side. So I was kind of in my head, remember this is a bill, this is how it becomes a law.
Yeah.
This is a law. Something like that for curriculum in our district, that, 10, 15-minute presentation of how we get from, if there was changes in curriculum and then legislative to press policies that we just did. But something cohesive that kind of ties it all together.
And is that something you want to discuss at a meeting for sure, or could it be in another format if it was?
I would rather it be at a meeting because I think that would be information that would be good for the stakeholders in the district, meaning the parents, to kind of understand how it all ties together.
Consensus? Discuss it?
And
I'll
whatever
always talk.
light agenda, no rush.
Yeah. Okay.
I love curriculum, so we can talk it all night.
So that's at a meeting for sure.
Yep, got it.
Others? Going once? Okay. Okay, this is the final opportunity for public comment, and may I have the sign-in sheet, please?
Tonya.
Okay, just bring it to me.
Thank you, Ryan.
Okay. The person signed up is Tonya Grosinger.
Sorry, guys, I'll make this quick. Number one, I did have a question, and I will also send an email with my question just to make sure that it gets answered. But I would like to know when it became policy, I guess, that having a doctor's note is not does not suffice as a replacement to a negative COVID test. I remember growing up, and if I had strep throat and needed to be out of school for a couple days, the school didn't need to see my my test for strep throat. They just needed the doctor's note that said she had strep throat. But we're having kids go to the doctor for symptoms of COVID that don't end up being COVID, and then they go back with their doctor's note, but then the schools are coming back saying we need to see the actual test results. So I just don't know, are those in place of doctor's notes now? When did that become a policy? Because that might be violating some HIPAA stuff right there. The other thing I wanted to say is, after reading you guys some of those sex ed curriculum stuff, as a parent, I just want to voice a couple of concerns I have. There are certain things that I don't mind my kids learning at certain ages. My oldest right now is in 1st grade. I'm definitely for the no means no talk, my body, my rules, that type of stuff. But when it comes to having to specifically identify and use proper terminology for things more than just things like vagina and penis, he still just comes into my bedroom and in my bed and crawls in the middle of the night or says, "Mommy, my tummy hurts." Like, I don't understand how my 1st grader is supposed to identify the woman's reproductive system by 2nd grade. I mean, I'm really begging of you guys to look at these national standards, to print them out, and to read through what they're asking. I mean, they want definitions by the end of 5th grade of cisgender, pansexual, non-binary, sexual, or like all of these things, lesbian, gay, and which I understand, two-spirit. There are things that I don't know and I'm still trying to learn as an adult, and yet we have teachers that need to teach this to young kids. They were never taught how to teach it at school, I'm assuming, so how are we gonna offer more education to these teachers, more pay for these teachers to go get educated on how to define these things and define them properly to teach kids? So I'm really asking that you guys take a vote, look at these things, and do your homework before next school year, because this might be a real make it or break it for some families, because this is way too much for what they want our kids to learn.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any other public comments? Yes, Mr. Starkel.
Hi, Scott Starkel again, and as I was listening to Mrs. Junk, I think it's a great idea. You guys should have a communications person. It is well worth the money and would answer a lot of questions, cut off a lot of the misinformation that's out there, and ultimately streamline everything on behalf of it. You folks, administration, teachers, etc. I'd really like to see that considered. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Other public comments from anyone? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on. We are scheduled for a closed session tonight to discuss the Illinois Open Meetings Act, Section 2C2 and Section 2C1. We do not anticipate any action from closed session, so after the vote to go into closed session, the recording of tonight's meeting will be concluded. So at this time, I need a motion to go into closed session.
Second.
And a roll call, please.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Mrs. Junk.
Aye.
Mr. Carey. Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. 9:04. Okay. Dr. Fuchs, I have a concern. You don't know how to use this.